Trust isn't just fragile, it's sacred. Once someone breaks it, especially with a well-crafted lie, it cuts deep. If you've ever felt that gut punch moment of realizing someone close was never honest with you, you're not alone. Liars don't always reveal themselves with obvious red flags. In fact, the most dangerous ones come wrapped in charm, asking seemingly innocent questions that are actually calculated traps. These aren't just questions, they're weapons. If you miss the signs, you might not even see the betrayal coming until it's too late. In this video, I'm exposing 5 specific questions manipulative people use to fake connection while secretly pulling your strings. These tactics are subtle, strategic, and sadly common in relationships, at work, and even in everyday conversations. If you've ever said, "How did I not see it sooner?" this is for you. Every question I'll reveal builds on the last, showing you exactly how liars construct trust, only to destroy it. Don't skip a second. What you learn today could save you years of regret and help you build the kind of inner strength Stoicism teaches: calm, clarity, control. You're not powerless. You're just about to see what they never wanted you to notice. Hit that subscribe button if you're done being manipulated and ready to trust yourself more than anyone else. Let's get into it. First, I want you to understand why people lie. People don't just lie because they're bad. They lie because they're afraid, because they want control, or because something deep inside them is broken. These aren't excuses, just the brutal realities behind most deception. If you've ever asked yourself, why would someone do this to me? You're already on the path to seeing through it. Understanding the psychology of lying doesn't mean just spotting it. It means grasping the motives that drive people to betray trust, even their own. Fear is the most common trigger. Fear of rejection, fear of losing power, fear of being seen as weak or wrong. A person might lie to cover up a mistake, avoid conflict, or hold on to a relationship that's slipping away. And the lie isn't always malicious in the beginning, but over time, small lies snowball, and the person starts living inside the story they've created. They become more invested in protecting the image than facing the truth. By then, you're not dealing with someone who's just scared. You're dealing with someone who's willing to damage you to avoid discomfort themselves. Then, there's control. Some people lie because they want to manipulate the narrative. They lie to shift blame, twist facts, or plant doubt. This is strategic. It's not emotional. It's calculated. They know exactly what they're doing. It's about power, about staying one step ahead, about making you question your own instincts so they can move freely in the confusion. This type of lying is especially cruel because it erodes your sense of reality. You begin to wonder if you're overreacting, if you misunderstood, if it's somehow your fault. That's not an accident, that's the point. Finally, there's the kind of lying that comes from a damaged personality. Narcissists, for example, lie to preserve a grandiose image. They don't just want admiration, they need it. They believe they're entitled to special treatment, and they lie to maintain that illusion. People with antisocial traits often lie simply because they feel no guilt. There's no moral compass, no empathy. They use lies like tools to manipulate, to escape consequences, to win. These people can be charismatic, even likable on the surface, but they're fundamentally disconnected from the emotional damage they cause. The harm they do isn't an accident, it's irrelevant to them. Understanding why people lie doesn't make the lie any less dangerous. On the contrary, it helps you see that not everyone who speaks kindly has good intentions. Some people get so good at hiding the truth that you don't realize you're being manipulated until it's too late. But they always leave clues, especially in the questions they ask. If someone asks you one of these 5 questions, be careful. They might not be seeking truth, they're trying to control you. Now let's move on to the first question. Number 1, don't you trust me? Once you start understanding why people lie, whether it's fear, control, or disordered thinking, you begin to see the patterns in how they manipulate. But recognizing the lie is only half the battle. The harder part is recognizing how it feels when it's happening. Because manipulation doesn't usually come in the form of an obvious threat. It comes in the form of guilt, of pressure, of subtle emotional hooks that make you question yourself more than the person in front of you. One of the most common and insidious phrases used in this game is just 3 simple words. Don't you trust me? At first glance, it sounds innocent, even hurtful, the kind of thing someone says when they feel misunderstood. But look closer. That question isn't a request for understanding. It's a demand for compliance. It's not about truth. It's about silencing your doubt. Imagine being asked that question in a moment when you're already uncertain, when your gut is signaling that something doesn't add up. You pause. You ask a reasonable question. You seek clarity. And instead of getting an answer, you're met with a hurt expression and that loaded phrase. Suddenly, the focus shifts. Now it's not about the facts anymore. It's about you, your suspicion, your supposed lack of trust. You feel like the bad guy just for asking. This is emotional blackmail at its quietest. It's a calculated move that plays on your deepest wiring, the desire to keep peace, to be seen as kind, to avoid confrontation. And the more conscientious you are, the more naturally trusting, the more eager to keep relationships harmonious, the more likely you are to fold under this kind of pressure. You tell yourself maybe you are overthinking, maybe asking questions was too much. So you let it go, you stay quiet, and they get exactly what they wanted: your silence, your doubt, your permission. But Stoicism offers a very different response. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit." It's a brutal truth, but also a liberating one, because it reminds us that manipulation only works when we allow it to. When we give up the reins of our own judgment, a Stoic doesn't let emotional manipulation override reason. A Stoic hears the question, "Don't you trust me?" and doesn't get pulled into the guilt trip. Instead, they ground themselves in what they know. Trust is not something you demand. It's something you earn over time through clarity, not emotional coercion. One of the most dangerous mistakes people make, especially good, well-meaning people, is confusing trust with blind acceptance, thinking that to question someone is to offend them, that to set boundaries is to create conflict. But the truth is, refusing to ask the hard questions when something feels off isn't kindness. It's neglecting your own intuition. And often that comes from fear of tension, of being seen as difficult, of ruining a moment. But that fear is exactly what manipulators rely on. It's their doorway in. So what's the solution? It's not confrontation for the sake of drama. It's not cold detachment either. It's calm clarity. It's the quiet strength to hold your ground even when someone is trying to emotionally corner you. It's being able to respond not with anger, not with apology, but with calm truth. Trust is earned by clarity, not demanded by guilt. That one sentence can shift the entire dynamic. It puts responsibility back where it belongs, on actions, not feelings. It breaks the manipulation without creating unnecessary conflict. It protects your peace without closing your heart. And that's the core of Stoic thinking. Don't let someone else's emotions dictate your choices. Don't let their guilt become your compass, your judgment, your reason, your inner clarity. That's your true guide. If someone tries to hijack that with shame or emotional pressure, it's not a sign to back down. It's a sign to stand firm. You don't have to be cold to be strong. You don't have to be suspicious to be wise. But you do have to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt when your gut and the facts are telling you otherwise. Stoicism doesn't ask you to see the worst in people. Okay? It simply asks you to see clearly, to respond with reason, not reactivity. And most of all, to remember that your peace isn't something you owe to anyone. It's something you protect, especially from those who try to earn your silence with guilt. 2. Why would I lie? One of the most manipulative tricks in the liar's playbook is hiding behind a question that seems reasonable on the surface, but is designed to shut down suspicion. Why would I lie? It's a question that doesn't seek clarity. It demands that you doubt yourself. It's not meant to start a conversation, it's meant to end it. The problem is, this tactic works alarmingly well, especially on people who don't want to assume the worst in others. And that's the trap. A false sense of logic that leads to very real consequences. When someone asks, "Why would I lie?" what they're really doing is deflecting the spotlight away from their behavior and onto your judgment. It's a rhetorical move that implies their honesty is self-evident because they have a good reputation, a long history, or because they simply don't seem to have a motive. But deception doesn't always come with obvious motives, and people don't always lie for reasons that are rational or visible to you. They lie to protect their ego, their advantage, their image. Sometimes they lie because it's a habit, and sometimes they lie because they assume you won't bother to dig deeper. Take this example. A man sits across the table from an insurance agent. The agent is confident, relaxed, even friendly. He says he's been in the business for over 30 years. He reassures the client repeatedly that the plan he's recommending is straightforward, no hidden fees, nothing to worry about. When the client hesitates and asks a clarifying question, the agent leans back and says, "Why would I lie? I've built my whole career on trust." The tone is smooth, even offended. It catches the client off guard. The implication is clear. If you doubt me, you're insulting me. Not wanting to seem paranoid, the client lets it go and signs the contract. Weeks later, a closer look reveals a clause buried in fine print, one that makes the policy far less favorable than it appeared. The damage is done. And the most painful part isn't just the money lost, it's the betrayal, the realization that your instincts were right, but you overrode them because someone told you that questioning them was unreasonable. This is the danger of false logic. Just because someone says they have no reason to lie doesn't mean they're telling the truth. The truth doesn't depend on how credible someone appears. It depends on facts, evidence, and actions in the present, not a carefully curated history. That's where Stoicism becomes a shield. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." It's a clear, almost brutal call to integrity. But more importantly, it reminds us where to place our trust, not in reputation, not in personality, but in the rightness of the thing itself. A Stoic doesn't get distracted by someone's resume or charm. A Stoic asks, "Is this true right? Now, does this align with reality? Can I verify it for myself?" That kind of thinking cuts through emotional noise and social manipulation. It gives you the courage to question what doesn't sit right, even if it comes from someone who seems trustworthy, especially when it does. One of the biggest cognitive traps people fall into is the assumption that liars must have a clear, logical motive, and that if no motive is visible, no lie could possibly exist. But people are not always logical. Some lie instinctively, some lie to avoid discomfort, even when the stakes are low. Some lie just to see if they can get away with it. And if you're waiting for a good enough reason before you allow yourself to be skeptical, you've already handed over your judgment to someone else's narrative. That's not wisdom. That's wishful thinking. This doesn't mean walking through life in a state of distrust. Stoicism isn't about becoming cynical or emotionally armored. It's about clarity. It's about refusing to confuse someone's confidence with proof. It's about knowing that a calm, rational question is not disrespectful. It's necessary. And if someone reacts to your questions with guilt-tripping, evasion, or deflection, you have your answer. Not the one they gave, but the one they revealed. Here's a thought worth sitting with. People who are honest don't mind being questioned. They welcome it because they have nothing to hide. It's only the dishonest who feel threatened by scrutiny. So the next time someone throws that line at you, "Why would I lie?" take a breath, pause, and remember, it's not your job to prove they would. It's their job to show they aren't. And if they can't do that without defensiveness or diversion, you have every right to dig deeper, ask harder, and protect yourself. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been guilted into trusting someone, only to find out later they weren't telling the truth? What tipped you off, and what would you do differently now? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it, because your story might be the one that helps someone else spot the lie before it costs them. And remember, trust isn't a feeling, it's a pattern. And if you're not sure, check the facts. Stoics don't place faith in appearances, they place it in truth. 3. Can you keep a secret? There's a particular kind of manipulation that doesn't feel like manipulation at all. It feels like closeness, like trust, like being led into a private world where only a select few are allowed. It starts with a quiet tone, a glance over the shoulder, and that one disarming question. Can you keep a secret? It seems innocent, like an invitation to bond. But what it often creates is something far more dangerous, a hidden contract, one you didn't agree to but now feel obligated to uphold. And in many cases, that false sense of intimacy is being used to blur your moral boundaries. The problem with that question is that it bypasses your values and targets your loyalty. It doesn't ask if you should keep the secret. It assumes you will. It assumes your silence. It sets a trap, not with force, but with emotional weight. When someone frames a piece of information as secret, it carries with it the implication that you now owe them something, that you're part of something together, that to speak up or even to question it would be a betrayal. And that's where the manipulation lives, not in the secret itself, but in the subtle pressure it puts on your conscience. Take a case like Rachel's. She worked in a tight-knit office where everything felt personal and informal. One afternoon, a co-worker pulled her aside and in a hushed tone said he had something serious to share, but only if she promised not to tell anyone. Out of politeness and curiosity, Rachel agreed. Then came the secret. The co-worker revealed that their boss had been mishandling company funds and covering it up. It wasn't just gossip. It was a serious ethical breach. But now Rachel was stuck. She had agreed to keep a secret that conflicted with her values. Speaking up would mean betraying someone she worked with every day. Staying silent would mean becoming a silent accomplice to something deeply wrong. That one question, can you keep a secret, had cornered her. This kind of dynamic is deeply manipulative because it trades on the illusion of closeness. It weaponizes your desire to be trustworthy. It makes silence feel like solidarity. And for many people, especially those who value loyalty and harmony, that emotional pressure is almost impossible to resist. But here's the truth. Most people never say out loud, not all secrets deserve to be kept. And just because someone asks you to be loyal doesn't mean they're worthy of it. The Stoics understood this clearly. Seneca wrote, "No evil propensity of the human heart is so powerful that it may not be subdued by discipline." In modern terms, that means no matter how strong the pull to stay quiet or protect someone else's wrongdoing, you always have the power to choose differently. But it requires discipline, clarity, and the willingness to feel uncomfortable in the name of what's right. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be cold. It teaches you to maintain your ethical boundaries even when someone tries to blur them with false intimacy. Rachel's mistake wasn't in listening. It was in agreeing too quickly to a loyalty that hadn't earned her trust. She confused confidentiality with complicity. And she paid for it, not with scandal, but with months of anxiety, second-guessing, and the quiet erosion of her own integrity. The lesson she eventually learned was simple, but hard-won. Before you promise to keep a secret, you have to ask yourself one thing. Does this align with my values? If it doesn't, then you owe no one your silence, especially not someone who tried to buy it with a whisper. This is the kind of inner discipline the Stoics trained for, the ability to pause in the moment, look past the emotional pressure, and act according to principle, not impulse. When someone tries to make you part of a secret that feels wrong, you don't owe them protection. You owe yourself honesty, you owe yourself peace of mind, and you owe the truth its place in the light. Because when false loyalty demands you compromise your values, it's not loyalty anymore, it's control. And the most powerful thing you can do in that moment is simply quietly say no. For who told you that? Why is it that when you confront someone with a hard truth, the first thing they ask is, who told you that, instead of simply addressing what's been said? It's not curiosity. It's not confusion. It's control. That question is a tactical move designed to flip the script, not to explore the truth, but to discredit it. The goal is no longer about facts or accountability. It becomes about policing information, tracking loyalties, and making you feel like you're the one who did something wrong just by knowing what you know. This psychological trick is more common than people realize, especially in situations where the person being questioned has something to hide. Instead of answering directly, they divert the conversation. They want to know the source, not the substance. The moment you hear, who told you that, you're being pulled into a different kind of game, one that's meant to shift your focus away from their actions and toward your own. It's a classic power play, and it works because it creates doubt. Suddenly, you're not sure if you're the one out of line. You feel like maybe you crossed a line by listening to something you shouldn't have heard. But here's the reality. The person trying to redirect your attention away from the truth is the one who's on unstable ground. And no matter how calmly or confidently they ask that question, it's a mask, a way to avoid being held accountable for something they likely already know is wrong. Take a high-profile example like the case of Lance Armstrong. For years, he dominated professional cycling and became a symbol of resilience and success. But behind the scenes, rumors of performance-enhancing drug use kept surfacing. Whenever questioned, Armstrong didn't address the evidence directly. He attacked sources, he questioned motives, he cast doubt on whistleblowers rather than answering the accusations. Who's saying this became his shield, and for a long time, it worked. People hesitated, they didn't want to accuse without perfect proof. They got lost in the drama of who said what, instead of staying grounded in the question that really mattered. Is it true? That's the danger of this tactic. It pulls attention away from the truth and toward the politics of knowledge. It transforms a moral issue into a loyalty test. And for anyone caught in the middle, it creates a fog. You stop trusting your own instincts. You start wondering if the problem isn't the lie, but the fact that you know it. Stoic philosophy offers a way out of this trap. Epictetus once said, "Seek not the favor of the multitude. It is seldom got by honest and lawful means." What that means is simple. People who live with integrity don't obsess over who said what. They don't scramble to control narratives or investigate informants. They confront what's in front of them with clarity and calm. Stoicism teaches us that the truth stands on its own. It doesn't need to be protected by secrecy, nor does it fall apart just because someone whispered it. When someone responds with, "Who told you that?" they're showing you where their priorities lie, not in truth, not in repair, but in control. They want to manage perception, not behavior. That question is their shield, their distraction, their delay, and the Stoic response is to refuse the detour, to stay rooted, to respond not with anger or defense, but with clarity. Let's focus on whether it's true, not who said it, because at the end of the day, character isn't revealed by how someone responds when they're praised. It's revealed by how they respond when they're questioned. When the truth corners them, do they stand with it or start looking for someone to blame? That's a test we all face eventually, and when it happens, your job isn't to track sources or justify your right to ask. Your job is to hold the line, to stay steady, to demand substance over spin. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to dodge accountability by making it about how you found something out rather than whether it was true? What did you do in that moment? And what do you wish you'd said instead? Share your experience in the comments below. Your insight might help someone else hold their ground when it matters most. 5. Don't you remember? What happens when someone insists you said or agreed to something you're certain never happened? You pause, you try to recall, you second-guess yourself. And in that hesitation, they plant the seed of control. That simple question, "Don't you remember?" can become the gateway to something far more destructive: gaslighting. It's not just about rewriting the past. It's about making you doubt your grip on reality. Gaslighting is one of the most corrosive forms of psychological manipulation because it doesn't attack your ideas. It attacks your mind. It creates confusion and then uses that confusion as leverage. Over time, you stop trusting your memory. You begin deferring to the other person's version of events, not because it makes sense, but because they say it with such conviction. They seem so sure, so detailed, so calm. And you start to feel unstable, as if your ability to perceive and remember clearly isn't reliable anymore. That's the trap. This tactic often begins subtly. A partner, friend, or co-worker insists that something was agreed upon, something that goes against your values, your plans, or your understanding of events. When you question it, they act surprised or even hurt, saying they're shocked you don't remember. Their tone is calm but assertive, and the message is clear: you're the one who's wrong here. As you search your memory for clarity, your uncertainty becomes their opportunity. They don't just offer an alternate version of the past, they replace yours. In these moments, a dangerous dynamic takes shape. The manipulator positions themselves as the stable, rational one. You become the confused, emotional one. But it's all by design. The more they chip away at your confidence in your perception, the more dependent you become on theirs. The goal isn't just to win an argument, it's to take control of your reality. Consider a relatable example. You're in a long-term relationship, and one day your partner tells you that you agreed to make a major life decision together. Perhaps it's changing careers, moving cities, or making a large financial commitment. You have no memory of that conversation. In fact, you're sure you would have objected. But instead of discussing it, they insist you not only agreed, you were enthusiastic. They recall the exact time, the setting, maybe even what you were wearing. The details sound convincing, but you feel completely disconnected from this memory. And yet you begin to question yourself. Did I forget? Did I miss something? Am I overreacting? What you're experiencing isn't forgetfulness, it's psychological pressure. And if this pattern continues, the emotional impact builds. Eventually, you stop questioning them. You stop speaking up. You become passive, not because you don't care, but because you no longer trust your voice in the room. Stoicism offers a powerful antidote to this kind of manipulation, not through confrontation, but through internal discipline. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." In the context of gaslighting, this means one thing: no one has the right to rewrite your reality. Your mind, your perception, your reasoning, your memory, these are yours. The moment you hand them over to someone else, you lose more than clarity. You lose sovereignty. A Stoic doesn't chase validation from others. They don't collapse under the weight of someone else's certainty. Instead, they stay rooted in what they know. If that knowledge feels unclear, they seek documentation, not emotional reassurance. If your memory is uncertain, trust your written words, your calendar, your notes, your lived experience. The point is not to argue endlessly over who's right. It's to stay grounded in what's real. This mindset takes effort. It demands you slow your emotional responses and build habits that protect your perception. Write things down, confirm important agreements in writing, reflect regularly. These practices aren't about becoming rigid or paranoid. They're about creating a baseline of truth that can't be easily shaken. Most importantly, remember, just because someone speaks with confidence doesn't mean they speak the truth. Some people learn to weaponize certainty. They understand that tone can override fact, that repetition can distort memory. But a Stoic sees through this. A Stoic doesn't match volume with volume or emotion with emotion. They return to principle, to clarity, to self-trust. Gaslighting only works when you begin to believe that someone else sees your life more clearly than you do. But they don't. They never did. And the moment you reclaim your perception through awareness, reflection, and discipline, you take back your power, not just over that moment, but over your mind and your life. If you've made it this far, then you already know the truth. Liars don't just tell lies. They ask the right questions to disarm you, to make you doubt yourself, to pull you into their version of reality while quietly rewriting yours. These 5 questions may seem harmless on the surface, but now you know better. Now you see the pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The real power isn't in exposing manipulators, it's in protecting yourself, in choosing awareness over naivety, calm over confusion, truth over emotional traps. You don't need to call anyone out in a dramatic way. Just stay grounded, stay sharp. You are no one's pawn and your mind is not up for negotiation. So the next time someone throws one of these questions at you, pause, breathe, and remember what you've learned here. You're not just surviving manipulation, you're rising above it. If this message lit something up in you, if it made you reflect, remember, or finally get it, then hit that subscribe button. Join this space where we speak truth, sharpen instincts, and take back control, one quiet realization at a time. Because trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. But self-trust, that's the foundation for everything. Stay strong, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.